Minnesota Vikings select.
He's a longtime NFL draft expert who's been sweating Vikings football since the Randy Moss era.
Straight cash, homie.
Welcome to Thor Talks Purple.
Hello and welcome in, everyone, to Thor Talks Purple. Today, producer AJ and I are excited to welcome in Judd Zulgad, as we're going to every Tuesday episode going forward. Sports Dad, it's good to see you. I hope you're doing better today than the Vikings front office and team.
Oh, I'm doing great because I've got ideas for them. I've got things like I've pivoted now because it felt like we spent weeks complaining about O'Connell's play calling, and I'm now past play calling, and I've moved on to scheme philosophy. The Max Brosmer thing basically pushed me off the end of the diving board. I couldn't believe that they asked Max Brosmer to do some of the things that they did. So I got a lot of thoughts. Some of which I think you'll like, some of which you might not like, but that's okay because that's what it's all about. And I'm just glad to see, Thor, that you've got a show now, that you've joined the family, and it's great to have you aboard. Age and I welcome you, and Age, a true talent, because I know this as he's my co-host on Judd's hockey show. So you are in very good hands with AJ Fredrickson.
As I know, yeah, AJ and I've had some fun so far, and we're excited to welcome you in today. I have plenty of thoughts too. We're going to be slinging some takes on this show. Have some new segments to begin introducing, and then I have a couple of questions for Judd in the middle of the show that Judd does not know are coming. So I'm pretty fascinated to hear what Judd has to say about that. Let's dive right into it because we have a full dance card today. Our very first segment, our new segment, is called A Modest Proposal. And the idea of this segment is very simple. Judd is going to give an idea for an improvement to the Vikings organization, whether that's a long-term kind of treetop thing, whether that's more zoomed in, a short-term suggestion for the team to try to improve. And then I'm going to do the same. As Judd was mentioning, we have plenty to complain about this season, unfortunately, as Viking fans. So I'm pretty fascinated to see where the Sports Dad takes this one. Judd, what is your modest proposal for the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, if I may, can we drop the word modest? Because I have a proposal. It will not be modest. I texted you this last night because you're like, you can do anything from like run the ball more to this. I'm like, I'm past run the ball more, okay? So here is my proposal.
Yeah.
I am firing Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. I am firing Ryan Grigson. And I am not going to cite the quarterback situation in my reasoning, okay? Because I actually think the quarterback situation is far more O'Connell, which I've got problems with as well. But here's why I am making major front office changes after the season comes to an end. Just to be clear, not today, after the season comes to an end. I don't know if you guys saw this, but my former colleague at the Star Tribune, Mark Craig, who does great work, had this note in Monday's paper. And this to me, so we've talked about Kwesi's drafts, right? And the drafts have not been great, blah, blah, blah. Let me read you, though, this from the Star Tribune. And this just does a great job of isolating the problems. The Vikings have 4 players on their roster who were drafted 3 to 5 years ago. So we're not including the most recent draft classes. In the case of this class, we don't know yet, okay? So 3 to 5 years ago. One is from Rick Spielman's last year in 2021, and 3 are from the first 2 years under Kwesi, 22 and 23. The only regulars are Christian Darrisaw, Rick Spielman, Jordan Addison, first-round pick, Kwesi guy. The others on the roster currently, because Ty Chandler, I believe, is still on IR and has been all season long, are Jay Ward, special teams guy, Jalen Naylor, pending free agent, probably going to leave, but a contributor. Now let me give you the juxtaposition of the rest of the NFC North, boys. The Packers have, in the same time span, 18 players and 12 starters, who they drafted from 21 to 23, okay? The Vikings, again, was 4 players, 2 starters. Packers, 18 and 12. The Lions, 13 players, 11 starters. Same drafts. The Bears, 6 players, 5 of them, though, are starters. So this is why you had to spend $243 million in March in contracts, which, by the way, so I believe the Patriots went the hardest up against the cap, but cash over cap, the Vikings led the entire league. And you had to do that because your drafts were so despicably bad. This to me is a starting point. I didn't even mention McCarthy. Okay. Again, I'm not pounding. I can pound the table on the quarterbacks with Phil and Declan. But this to me, Kwesi and Ryan Grigson, who I perceive to be his football guy, Thor, my proposal is both of them should be gone.
Yeah, the drafting is really bad. And with Grigson, you want to take it to Grigson, outside of the first pick of Ryan Grigson's tenure with the Colts, which he lucked into because they had the worst record. And that is a pun for folks out there. But outside of that, Grigson's drafting was terrible with the Colts. Kwesi's drafting has been terrible with the Vikings. You start, of course, 2022. And, talk about the mistake to not just sit where you were and accept the gift that the NFL had handed to you in Kyle Hamilton. And instead you trade down. And of course, Louis Sean and Andrew Booth and Ed Ingram came out of that. But you tried to give the contextual benefit of the doubt of he was using a lot of Spielman scouts and he sort of takes the temperature of the room. So maybe it was those guys that were leading to some of these bad decisions. What excuse do you have for the last three classes then? Right. The referendum isn't totally in on them, but you just look at those four classes, Judd, to your point, you have a startling lack of production, startling lack of NFL players, startling lack of starters there. And yeah, of course, you had to over leverage yourself then in free agency. You did not have the roster depth at that point. And you ended up throwing money at a lot of guys that were over 30 and had injury concerns. And you're doing that in part to try to play the comp pick game as well, which we have advocated for, but you had to do that again because your depth is so bad. So you had to start playing the game a different way. Kwesi ended up chasing this offseason, and he appeared to whiff very bad. He did whiff very bad in that free agent class.
Yep. And then, Thor, just quickly off of the point, okay? The 24 free agent class, I think is arguably the best that the Vikings have ever had.
That was very
like they signed guys that weren't household names. But let me just quickly run through the 2025 free agent class and where these guys rank PFF wise, okay?
Oh boy.
Because this is the other problem. This didn't work. And by the way, you cannot go back to the well continually. The free agent well dries up. All right. Jonathan Allen among defensive tackles, 109 PFF. Hargrave, 70. Eric Wilson, who has played well for who he is among interior linebackers, 86. Byron Murphy Jr., who you brought back on a big contract, is 172nd among cornerbacks. Isaiah Rodgers is 57. Jeff Okudah, before he got hurt, was 199 out of 201 cornerbacks.
Who were the two guys beneath Jeff Okudah?
I didn't even recognize them, Thor. I didn't even recognize them. Theo Jackson, who you brought back, is 68 among safeties. Will Fries is 63rd among guards. Aaron Jones is 83rd. You brought him back among running backs. Justin School, your buddy, is 74th among tackles. Jordan Mason, who you traded for, is 36th among running backs. And Ryan Kelly, actually, who's played in 5 games, is 5th among centers. So your gold standard is a guy who unfortunately has missed most of the season. Other than that, this is why going back to free agency because you whiffed on draft picks eventually is going to bite you in the rear end.
Yeah, 100%. And you talk about backing yourself into a corner because of those poor drafts, and then what you had to do with it. If that is this situation, you have to be a better situational GM. And just one, Judd, we've talked about a bunch of these examples, but just one of them that just left you scratching your head going into the season. And I won't talk about quarterback as well, because that has been discussed ad nauseum. But let's go to the defensive side of the ball where you eschewed a boundary cornerback need. And because of that, you ended up having to move Byron Murphy to full-time boundary cornerback, take him out of the slot where he's better. Then you had to take Josh Metellus out of his move piece role and move him into the slot. You depreciate both of those guys' games while still leaving yourself with no cornerback depth. Like the boundary cornerback thing, it was just like, all right, when is he going to get the boundary corner? And that's when it was like, is it going to be Asante Samuel? Is it going to be? And it was like, no. There is no help coming. They're going to have to play multiple guys out of position and then play with no depth all season. And it's like, if this is your, win now roster and you're building up this, How do you have an oversight like that? It's pretty stunning, and you see the manifestations of that, and then how it is depreciated Byron Murphy and Josh Metellus' game. Not the best to do to your coaching staff there. You put them in a bad spot as well. And that's, of course, your defensive coaching staff. And I think the offensive staff has some thoughts about some things that Kwesi did to them as well.
And before he got hurt, who on earth thought Jeff Okudah could play? Like, he's had unbelievable chances, and he's been hurt. Like, that's the other thing. Like, that to me is a starting point of what are you even thinking? Yes, Brian Flores is very good. Yes, he gets the most from guys. Jeff Okudah, though, had a resume of failure. So anyway.
He sure did. Yeah, and you had, of course, opportunities to fix that. He certainly had the money to at the beginning of the offseason. But even outside of that, how do you not sort of recognize the flashing red light, whether it's a trade acquisition, whether it's bring back one of the old street free agents like you did last year, but then you ended up starting a couple of those guys in the summer. And he eschewed it all. Didn't make a trade for one either. And the secondary is in the state that it's in. Judd, you went more long view on this, and after the season, I'm happy about that because mine is a this season thing and it's a right now thing. My modest proposal for the Vikings is play the kids. This is now time to evaluate the rest of the season. Your priority now, it's not trying to moneyball every single win and try to grind out every single win as much as make sure that you get eyes on and developmental time for some of your young players or guys that you're not sure about yet to try to make a decision on them for the future. There is going to be a lot of roster shakeup this offseason. I would love for whoever's making that decision, whether that's Kwesi and crew, whether that's a new administration, whatever it may be, I would like for there to be more tape and more playing time and opportunity developmental time for some of these young guys. And I'm fine, having some of these guys that we know aren't as good as maybe some of the veterans. But if we know some of these veterans are going to be gone next year, I'm not saying bench them all and just outright tank down the stretch. I am saying, can we figure out ways to get some of those younger guys on the field? I'm talking about things like cut down Aaron Jones's playing time. If Jordan Mason going to be on the team next year, I would like to see him as a lead back. I would like to see Xavier Scott on the field more. Aaron Jones can't stay healthy anyway, and I do not believe he's going to be on the roster next year. You are playing out the string. What need do we have for him to suck up most of the running back touches going forward? I'm talking about play Ty Felton. And by the way, play Ty Felton, you cowards. Show us Ty Felton on the field as a wide receiver. You used a third-round pick on this guy. You took him over Cam Scattaboo. You took him right behind Jared Wilson and Xavier Watts, who have been tremendous as rookies.
Yep.
Play Ty Felton. If you used a third-round pick on a gunner, and that's just what it's going to be, I agree. Give Kwesi his walking papers right now. Otherwise, friggin' play Ty Felton. We have to see if that guy's got it. We have to see if he can be involved in the wide receiver rotation next year, right? The wide receiver room, we'll have to see what we get out of that. I think we both assume Jalen Naylor is going to be leaving in free agency over the offseason, which will leave a vacancy at wide receiver 3. Your wide receiver 4 was just released yesterday. We'll be talking about that more later on in this episode. And then uncertainty with Jefferson and maybe even Addison. We assume that they'll be back next year, but we don't. The frustration and stuff like that. I at least want evaluation time for Ty Felton. I want to get eyes on Ty Felton. And another thing, by the way, and this was a part of Ty Felton's evaluation. I said at the time, Judd, you'll recall. The issues with Ty Felton's evaluation, he's stick thin and he had a rudimentary release package, and you could jar him along the route path because of that. You could jar him off the line because of that. And then with the ball coming, if you jarred him at all, his ball skills disappeared. And so down the field was my concern with Ty Felton, even though he is a speedster. But the thing he was really good at last year at Maryland, and I imagine the reason that Keenan McCardle was able to convince old Kwesi to take his young Maryland Terrapin there in the 3rd round was because of all the yardage that Ty Felton manufactured after the catch. So Maryland, who had a quarterback who had a wet noodle arm, I mean, the whole time that Felton was there, first it was Talia Tagovailoa, who we called Talia, turn the ball over at Maryland. And then it was this kid, Billy Edwards, but they did not have big arms, and they would get Felton the ball short. And then he would run. He's really good. You just shuttle him the ball there short.
Imagine that.
and to turn upfield, try to
Whoa,
turn the
whoa.
Jets on.
Whoa.
Time
So
out.
wait, hold on. Back up. So short passes?
Short, quick passes
No,
to get the ball
that's not how you play football.
into the
You
receiver's
drive the
head
ball.
immediately and try to get him into space.
What you're describing is a wide receiver that would work really well for an inexperienced quarterback system who needs to get the ball out
I'm
quick.
done with this show. I'm done with this show.
No, Thor, I love this proposal because this is something that Judd and I have been talking about Wildwise on Judd's hockey show. But when it comes to evaluating youth, you have to play them because everybody can live in draft day wonderland and the ceiling of what this player could be. Oh, the combine reports are great. He was a super. Did you see how fast he ran the shuttle? It doesn't matter until you see them on field in the NFL. And for the Vikings, I mean, your future is no longer playoffs. That is done. You have to look to the year ahead. And for Kevin O'Connell, for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, you need to gather this info. On one side, it's kind of punching yourself because it might expose how bad of a drafter you are, despite how bad it already looks already. But at the same time, it's going to get you the intel for an off-season plan of, okay, now we recognize this guy might be able to stick. We don't need to allocate, salary cap to here in order to buff up this position, or vice versa. You're going to get with this guy, we totally missed on, and it's embarrassing, but now we at least know so we can try to save our bacon and keep our jobs. So this proposal is great.
That's it. And speaking specifically to Felton, you have to have an idea heading into next year in your wide receiver hierarchy, whatever that ends up being, a more definitive idea of how does he fit into that? Where could he be in that? We don't want to do the thing again of pulling guys above their import or like they're doing they did with the secondary this year. And they'll be Byron Murray, he'll be just as good on the boundary the whole time as he was, in the slot for most of the time. Or Metellus will be just as good in the nickel as he was as the move piece guy. I want to have a better idea with Ty Felton. And again, I actually think the one thing that he can do right now, it's not something that's in O'Connell's playbook. Kevin, you hearing us? Like maybe we could add something like this, but it's something that would help out the young quarterback and probably would have helped out Brosmer as well. I try and do that. And I know the justification to this point as well. We have the two stud receivers at the top, and then we have the two tight ends when they're both healthy. And so we do the 12 personnel, but then when we go into 3 wide receiver sets, Jay Naylor's out there. So we don't have any space for Ty Felton. Figure it out. Get him on the field. Even 4 wide receiver sets, motioning guys around. And again, just manufacture a little space to get the ball in his hands. At least see if the one thing that he was good at as his last year, because Ty Felton was a late breakout guy, if that thing translates. Having a wide receiver that you can manufacture touches to, even if he can't do stuff down the field, even if that skill never develops, there is a value to that and can get on the field.
You should not be nearly as concerned about wins now, though. So, I don't care whose playing time decreases. That's not my problem now. In fact, you know what? Personally, I think you should lose. There's no advantage to winning. There's an advantage to seeing progress, but progress can come in losses. You did not say one that I thought you might, and forgive me if it's on your list. How about some Jay Ward for Harrison Smith? Harrison deserves a send-off. The last game, knock yourself out, buddy boy. Harrison Smith does not need to play entire games.
And he shouldn't be, yeah. And Jay Ward is another great one where they need to know heading into next year, what is this guy, right? I mean, that's going to dictate other decisions around it. And if it's like a nebulous thing of, Jay, we like Jay and hopefully, he puts in the work this offseason. Have a better idea of what that guy is. And you can do that by getting him on the field for 20 snaps these last 5 games per game I'm talking about. And a great way to do it would be cutting down Harry's playing time. I wouldn't mind a little bit less snaps for Hawkinson as well, to even just to get, whether it's Felton, whether it's get Urasek. I'm not talking about certainly a benching, but can we siphon off 10 to 12 snaps from him, from Oliver, and distribute them to some of these other guys? Ryan Kelly, I want to make sure that he is 100%. Of course, he had the hip flexor. I think O'Connell yesterday in his comments was speaking optimistically about that, his status as he was Aaron Jones's. I want to make sure that those guys are 105%, or else I'm fine sitting them. And whether it's Jurgens, whether it's Brendel, getting him more looks at center, if indeed Jonathan, the left side of your line is going to come back in this one. And by the way, I'll go further. Jonathan Allen and Hargrave, are they on the roster next year? I definitely don't think Hargrave is. I'm not sure that Jonathan Allen is either. get the kids in. Get Ingram's, Dawkins, Williams, some of the other kids. Levi Drake Rodriguez has gotten on the field, but I'd like to see him even more snaps going forward. And then some of your young developmental guys, I want to see them in there. And by the way, I don't want to see Justin School on the field for the Vikings ever again. If you have to put in Walter Rouse, do it. We need more information about Walter Rouse too. And if you're too scared to play because he's not playable, great. Release him after this season. That's what it is. We need to figure out who of these guys is long-term roster cogs and who is not. Play the kids, develop your guys. That is the priority right now, not wins. And to Judd's point, losing games at this point is beneficial to the future of the franchise. You're not making the playoffs. Getting as high up there in the draft as possible is the thing. And the last thing I'll say, Dallas Turner needs to be on the field for dang near every defensive snap going forward, irregardless of the status of Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard. I don't think that that's arguable. And Dallas Turner in the last 3 weeks has been one of the Vikings' best defenders. He's the best player on the field for the Vikings this past Sunday against the Seahawks. Judd, our middle two segments, it's I didn't have as good of a names for these. I'll just call it Call Your Shot. I have two multiple choice questions for you that I have crafted because I am fascinated to hear what your answer is. And it's great what your modest proposal was. We did not work this out in advance because the premise of this question, it required exactly what your modest proposal was. So play this out with me, Judd. Sure. Here is the hypothetical. If Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and his front office, the folks around him in the front office, those guys are mostly fired. So Kwesi's fired. Most of his top lieutenants are fired as well. And let's say a few assistant coaches are fired. We'll say Matt Daniels, Josh McCown, and Cooper. Well, we'll just toss those three out. But Kevin O'Connell is retained. In this scenario, what is J.J. McCarthy next year? You have four choices. A, the Vikings QB1 in week 1 of 2026. B, the Vikings QB2 week 1, 2026. C, another team's QB1 week 1, 2026. Or D, another team's QB2 in week 1 of 2026.
I am going unequivocally without any thought, because I've thought about this a lot. I spend time at night staring at the ceiling, thinking about this. He's QB2. He's QB2, and here's why. And I said this to Phil and Declan on Purple Daily State of the Vikings episode as well on Tuesday. I don't think this is going to work with O'Connell. Yesterday, his press conference at which he finally said, I've been doing some reflecting, and I need to make sure we run the plays that we run correctly. And that was off the Brosmer start. I don't think he can work. I honestly do not think that he can work or change enough for a young quarterback. I honestly think it would probably be in McCarthy's best interest to get out of here. I don't think it works. I don't think it works. I think it's been a disaster. I did not see it coming for 1 second. But as good as O'Connell was with Cousins, and make no mistake, he made Kirk Cousins better. As good as he was with Darnold, make no mistake, he played a key role in Darnold's development. He has been equally as bad with young QBs. And Brosmer, to me, verified it. Because up until now, it was a J.J. McCarthy conversation, which is what's wrong? Is he just not good? Play calling frustrated me. Schemes frustrated me. But it's really hard to tell when you're Thor dealing with one player. But now we're dealing with two, including, two guys at the opposite end of the spectrum. First round, 10th overall pick. Okay, expectations very high. UDFA, getting a start. This is your chance. What should we do on 4th and 1 at the 4-yard line? Okay, here's what we're going to do. Play action, fake power with CJ Ham, roll out bootleg, and then the kid's going to handle it well. Ridiculous. Kevin O'Connell needs a veteran quarterback who can do what Kevin O'Connell wants. And I honestly think now, Thor, that here's my concern about McCarthy's future. I think that they have skipped so many steps that McCarthy needed that I don't think you can just flip the switch now and say he's ready to go. He's crafted. I think he needed a lot more help. He has his deficiencies in game for sure, but I don't think the marriage works. And so with Justin Jefferson, no question in my opinion, behind the scenes weighing in as well, which is where's the damn football privately. He's been very good publicly. I think he is the backup here in 2026, but I honestly think long-term, his best interest would be to get out of here if O'Connell is the coach, because O'Connell's proven he needs a veteran QB. And I'm not even talking about can they win in the playoffs, because my answer there is, with the way that they run their scheme, an unequivocal no.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now we have some data from this season, and you look at the body of work of McCarthy against the non-McCarthy quarterback play there. McCarthy, 8 total touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 202 plays, I believe. The Wentz and Brosmer, you combine them, 6 total TDs, nine INTs, over 244 plays. The offense has been unwatchable. It's been unwatchable the same way all season long, and you do wonder if this scenario occurs, what Judd's proposal is, and now this talk and this chatter is starting to pick up here. If you get rid of the front office, and then you also sort of offer up a couple assistant coaches as like the sacrificial lambs for that, and you bring back KOC, you are by definition putting KOC on the 1-year shot clock. That's what always happens in that situation when that occurs. And next year, then, so 2026, you go to there, and the ownership and everyone is going to say all the right things about, KOC is the guy to lead us forward, yada yada, over the offseason if this happened. But then you get into next year. If you start next season 2-5, is Kevin O'Connell coaching the 8th game? And I think that will be at the forefront of Kevin O'Connell's mind when he's thinking about his own survival. And so are you going to go into next year unless McCarthy shows some real strides here, although the next 5 weeks, although the offensive environment that he's in, it's going to be hard to show some of those strides. And we'll see and we'll hope. But if that remains the case, you go into next year. And again, for O'Connell, it's the survival of going forward there. You would almost think that, yeah, he's going to be pushing for an acquisition of someone that can either press JJ or outright usurp him. And you wonder as well, in that scenario, because now you're benching a guy that was a top 10 pick, missed his rookie year, didn't miss what it's going to end up being close to half of the second year, and then you're just going to pull the plug on. You're going to put him back to backup. And O'Connell, we know that he would go out there and try to say the right things. I don't know that situation works. I don't know that you can put McCarthy back on the bench for a full season. There's a reason, like in the case of Josh Rosen or some of these other things, like if you're going to make sort of that public referendum of like, this isn't the guy right now, you almost have to move on from him at that point, so it's not a distraction. Another one was with Caleb Williams and Justin Fields, and then the Bears ended up having to sell, what we at the time was viewed as a sell low on Justin Fields, though maybe any draft pick for Justin Fields is a good trade. But it leads me to wonder, would the Vikings consider putting McCarthy on the block in that scenario and try to give more help if O'Connell was indeed going to go with a veteran quarterback? I think that this is something to monitor here. Like when you see all the other moves, if somehow the Vikings kept most of the staff and the front office, and it was like, all right, we'll give you guys a reset year, we'll restart it right now. I think that's where, you would have more continuity with that plan. Yep. If they blow this thing up 1 year into it, yep, it's not going to be a small blow up. This thing is going to be sticks of dynamite everywhere, and it's going to be the cartoon, and they're blowing the mountain up. And O'Connell will be the guy standing on top of the rubble at that point. But yeah, there's going to be, proverbial guns pointed at him from all directions at that point heading into next year.
Yep. If you go get a new GM, you're exactly right. That puts O'Connell on the clock, which, by the way, I think is very fair at this point. So I'm not complaining about that. That's very, very fair. But just from having covered the Wolves for a long time, my feeling is that there's a far better chance that Kwesi and Grigson get blown out. And then you're right. Then you go get a GM who's not O'Connell's guy, who puts him on the clock. I don't think O'Connell, who has signed through 2029, making an estimated, is it 12 to 13 million a season? I don't think he gets blown out immediately, but this team does have, there's precedent. 2009, the Vikings signed Childress to a contract extension that had a team option through 2013 or for 2013. He was blown out in 2010. So they've paid people not to work before. But I don't see how O'Connell, with the clock now ticking on him, can bring back McCarthy as his starter and think it's going to work, when I don't think that they put in the necessary sweat equity to develop him. It just feels like they've skipped so many steps now.
Do you guys feel like it when it comes to how they maybe value head coach versus top 10 drafted quarterback, which one would they rather hitch their wagon to in terms of keeping a Kevin O'Connell or, blowing him out and saying, we're going to try to make things work with JJ McCarthy? Or is it the vice versa where it's like, you know what? We've seen enough. We're going to move on from him. KOC has shown us that he's a good enough coach too. If we get him the right tools, he can take us to the promised land. Like, for me, that's the dilemma here of how do they value? Because I feel like
who has their ear age?
What was that?
Who gets to talk to the Wilfs? Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah, you got a point.
And you always spin stuff. Like right now, we are starting. Don't be fooled, boys. Those reports we started to see on Sunday were not by accident. It's not because somebody had to come to Jesus and said, I need to be more media friendly this week. It's because everybody's starting to stake their own territory by peeing on it, and it's only going to get worse now. It's a lot of people higher up trying to sort of spin their story. By the way, don't believe a word that you hear now. Don't believe a word that you hear. Now somebody has mysteriously said they wanted Darnold back, and in fact, they offered him the same contract. Why didn't we get that in March? Because in March it hadn't happened. In fact, it probably never happened. So we're about to be in the chaos, Thor.
We are seeing an active rewriting of history right in front of our eyes, and this isn't communism. This isn't pre-internet days. They're trying to do it right. Fans, they're trying to do it with y'all. They're trying to rewrite history that occurred in active time using the pens of writers. What stuff gets reported, as Judd knows, the things that get reported are things that people want out there.
Yep.
The things that they don't want out there don't get reported generally, right? I mean, that requires some really intrepid reporting. Generally, reports come when a phone call is made from one side to the other, and it's like, man, I'd like to get this out there. This will be beneficial for me, not for the organization, for me. And so you start seeing all these, especially the last couple of weeks. But what has been bizarre about this season is it didn't start the last couple of weeks. It started over the summer, and really almost you could argue in the spring. But we've been seeing these anonymous reports and different stuff like that are clearly, as I said yesterday on the show with AJ, the call is coming from inside the house. And now you have this bizarre thing of you have different people in the organization that clearly have their media people, and they're all trying to get their alternative histories out there. The Darnold thing, I do not believe that is true. From what I understand, that one seems like a total whitewash of what actually happened. And then some of these other different, like the whole Brosmer thing, that's just a bizarre narrative with that and everything we saw with that. There's a whole bunch of them that are going on right now. And it speaks, I think, to a building where a lot of people know that their jobs are on the line and they're trying to get out ahead of it to improve their argument for when they sit down with the Wills after this season. This is a rat scurrying around on the bottom of the ship thing, and that ship is going down. So we'll end up seeing what happens there, which leads us into our second and final multiple choice question, and we have an easy transition here, Judd. When is the first member of the coaching staff fired? You have four choices for this. In the next 2 weeks, so that's A. B, the second half of December. C, after the regular season, immediately after the regular season. Or D, no Vikings coaches will be fired prior to next season.
C. I don't think they're going to fire a coach in season, partially because it's just so lost now. So I think it's C. I think there will be substantial changes right after. I don't think the date has been set yet, but right after that regular season finale against the Packers, I think we'll see changes. I think Chris Cooper is gone. Like the offensive line stuff, and I know they've been hurt, but the fact that Ed Ingram is not as big a train wreck as he was here is going to be held against him. So I think Cooper is gone. Matt Daniels, I think, is going to, unfortunately, because I like the guy personally a lot, I think he's going to pay a price. It's funny, the Viking special teams grade's okay, but when you look at the amount of penalties, when you look at the colossal mistakes, I think he is gone. I think the one to keep your eye on, but his contract is up, is Brian Flores. I'm not convinced he's back. And I think he'll have other opportunities for sure to be a DC. I also think he might be a guy who wears out his welcome as well. Now he's done a pretty good job, so this is not a bash on him. He'll get a job. I don't think he coaches. I don't think he gets a head coaching job again until the lawsuit is done. But I would not be surprised one bit if Brian Flores is not retained and his contract is just allowed to expire.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, and if it's obviously the Vikings organization, they're I think they would be rooting for Brian Flores to get a head coaching job at that point, because then you get 2 third-round picks with the Rooney Rule if another team hires him there. But yeah, I could see a lateral move coming from Brian Flores and taking another team's defensive coordinator job if it's if that's what it ends up being, and the legal stuff and whatnot. The head coaching thing isn't available. I also agree with you on Cooper and Daniels. The one guy that because there's been so much blame tossed around and then speculation of who's going to lose their job and everything like this. There's one guy that I don't really get it why he skates around this often. Josh McCown. Josh, what are you doing, man? The whole season when the head coach is talking about mechanics, and of course then the public goes nuts on the 22-year-old quarterback who's coming off the year injury, you wonder how much of that was actually directed at Josh McCown. I've heard that there was not much communication going on between McCown and McCarthy last year. And okay, you're on IR, so there's not really the ability to coach there. But it didn't seem like that McCarthy got a lot of help with regards to that. With Kevin O'Connell, he had the 1 hour per week. Kevin, went out and trumpeted around his 1 hour per week that he gave to JJ. Kind of seems like JJ had 1 hour per week with the head coach and his quarterback coach last year. And like the VR stuff, I heard that was all overblown. I don't know how much of that actually occurred either. And so the young kid, the top 10 pick, is sort of off on his own for a year. And if it's a 10-year veteran, that's probably easier for him or whatever. Like you've already developed at that point. But like the idea that we were given that the Vikings had forwarded after McCarthy's injury years, this kid's going to be in this great environment and we have all these systems set up to help him progress. This isn't going to be a lost developmental season. They put out stories of like, he writes down notes of like all the different, opponents and like this sort of stuff. But it kind of seems like anecdotes like that are speaking to this, where it's like McCarthy's kind of off on his own and he's taking certain initiatives like, befriending, all the different teammates. The teammates would talk about, he'd come up and, further his relationship with them or hang out with them outside the facility and the different notes he was taking, stuff like that. You don't hear a lot of anecdotes outside of Kevin O'Connell with the 1 hour per week, again, which Kevin sure seemed proud of. You don't hear much about it. So it did not seem like much help there from the coach for a year. It almost appears that was literally a lost developmental season. Then you come into this summer, you had the banged up wide receiver core, you had the banged up offensive line, and then you played McCarthy for one series in the preseason, and then 2 games into the season, all of a sudden, now you want to talk about mechanics instead of an injury. And that has sort of been the refrain, and then you sort of set the public up to have that discourse ever since then. Tough scenes there. And so I do wonder what's going to happen with McCown too, but I totally agree with you on Cooper and Daniels. I think probably their time with the org is going to be done. And
McCown got blown out by the Carolina Panthers a few years ago, correct?
Yeah. Because he was there with Bryce Young as a rookie. And so let's just say Carolina believed there was something to be desired with the development of their number 1 overall pick quarterback as a rookie. And of course, Bryce Young, post McCown, has been able to figure some things out.
That's
he hasn't developed into a star, but yeah, I remember that pre-draft process because McCown, as the quarterback coach at the time of the Panthers, the NFL Network and ESPN and all this different stuff, they were following the Panthers coaching staff around to these various pro days of the big quarterbacks. Right. So all the top quarterbacks in that class, you would have the whole contingent from the Panthers show up and, it would be like cameras on them. And McCown, of course, was someone with that. And I think McCown told one of the other quarterbacks, like when he was on camera, this is before the draft, months before the draft, and not Bryce Young. I forgot if it was CJ Stroud or if it was might have even been Will Levis. But he was like, we'll be seeing you in Carolina this year. Like, I got some great basketball courts for you and stuff like. And it's like, okay, maybe he said that to like all of the guys, and maybe some of it was just off camera, but
right.
Yeah. I also, by the way, and this isn't him, this is his brother, but I found it weird that McCown's brother last week was all the hype tweets about Max Brosmer. I thought it was kind of odd in conjunction.
Max Brosmer is the smartest QB of all time. I mean, that
Someone
kid,
was telling the
you talk
media
about,
that.
you talk about set up to fail. Oh boy, did they screw him. I felt bad for him. I felt bad for him. I'm not going to lie. I wasn't mad at him. I just felt bad. I felt sympathy. There's nothing worse. There's nothing more condescending than to feel sympathy for a pro athlete. Like, that's the worst. Like, at least if you're mad, it's like, do your job. I'm like, he got no chance. So that was sad.
Josh McCown appears to be the first time young NFL quarterback coach that believes from the get that he deserves better. He's a guy that got an interview for the Houston Texans head coaching job a couple years ago, and you tend to hear his name get out there from media people of like, oh, could they look at Josh McCown or could, and it's like, what has he done to deserve that? And
I bought in, Thor.
Telling that is
full disclosure. I bought in. I was all in. I thought it was going to be great. I was clearly wrong.
Josh McCown is not qualified to be an NFL head coach. He's not qualified to be an NFL offensive coordinator. And at this point, I do not believe he is qualified to be an NFL quarterback coach. Moving on to our last one with that, the Adam Thielen release, Judd.
Yeah.
Pretty interesting on that. You know, as this soap opera that we've been in all season long, you had on Sunday the thing of, oh, he's a healthy scratch. And then O'Connell after the game explaining like it was for football competitive reasons. And it's like, does not speak well. And of course, it really seemed like they were telling you something's coming. And we got it yesterday, late morning, early afternoon, the official release of Adam Thielen. I'm curious your thoughts, Judd. My thoughts are just, what a perfect encapsulation or metaphor for this season. The Vikings in the late summer, you're days away from the start of the season, and you find yourself in this desperate situation, which you should have realized was coming before. Jefferson and Naylor had missed most of August. You knew that Addison had his suspension at the beginning of the season, and you're still there twiddling your thumbs in late August. And then the idea of Adam Thielen comes up and it's perfect. And it was, right? Like, I mean, just as far as like the story and the need there, and you had a desperate need at the time. And what ends up happening is the Vikings get held over a barrel. They end up, that thing gets, the negotiation ends up getting drawn out. The Vikings end up acquiescing to essentially, it was two pick swaps, a pick swap 2026, 2027, but the aggregate value, if you just add it all up, it's going to be roughly a late fourth round pick, a value that the Vikings gave up for, what was it, 8 catches and 3 drops?
3 drops.
In 11 cameo appearances in games. Adam Thielen's not playable anymore. I find it funny that he thinks like a veteran, like a contender is going to go out and not only sign him, but play him.
Terrible trade. Like, it didn't work out. It's interesting, just to point this out, Doogie reported that part of the reason why they made that trade is when Naylor got hurt in practice and training camp, the Vikings doctors are like, he's going to miss like 3 weeks. And then because Jalen, smart enough, was going into the last year of his contract, he's like, I'm going to go get an independent opinion in California. And the independent opinion was, we can do a procedure here and you'll be back by opening night, which, by the way, he was. So the Vikings panicked. Naylor bolted to get his own opinion, came back quickly. But here's my issue, too. So I'm going to dump on both sides. The trade's a terrible trade. You gave way too much. It was sort of exciting he was coming back. Now, I've never been a huge fan. But anyway, it was sort of exciting he is coming back. But what happened for him to be let go? Because for him to be let go, unless the team is like, we'll paint it this way, but we're done with your crap, just retire. Like, just play out the string, do what Harrison Smith is going to do, and retire. So, like, this notion that he's being let go, I'm going to pursue, this is my last year and I want to pursue opportunities. Who's going to call him? And where's he going to go? You just let, dude, the season sucks, okay? Just let it go, play it out. Last game against the Packers, tip your helmet, tip your cap, whatever the hell you do in football, and you're done playing. So it drives me crazy that there was this like storyline of, well, he wants to be let go to explore opportunities. Give me a freaking break. Dude, it's been a good career. Just retire.
Yeah, after I heard that, I was happy they gave him the walking papers. But you know what it made me think is like what a perfect marriage here. The Vikings in a corner of their own making that they had backed, they'd thrown themselves over the barrel to allow themselves to get run roughshod over by Dan Morgan, who's not exactly a Mensa level GM in the NFL, but he was running roughshod over them. It was, continuing get the price up, or we're not going to do it, right? And you end up extracting that late fourth round value, and then with this wide receiver that forces his way out of Carolina, who essentially threw him a life raft after the Vikings gave up on him the first time, and then Thielen, to his credit, had the resurgent couple seasons. But then Thielen forces his way back, right? Further putting the Vikings over, this proverbial barrel to get this thing done. And I'm with you, Judd. Like now I'm happy. I'm happy that this is open up. Maybe get felt. We'll see. Get some of those young kids on the field a little bit more. But not a great look from Adam Thielen forcing his way out. And honestly, it would be a fitting end to his career now if he just wasn't signed after he wanted to go to he seems to have this belief, and we'll see if a veteran team could use him, but he can't get open anymore and he can't catch. It's going to be hard to play NFL receiver with that game.
I will say this. I don't believe the story. I don't believe this story at all. This is something happened, so let's try and spin it the best way possible. Mm-hmm. Do I really think that Thielen's camp thought, okay, here's what we're going to do, buddy boy. We're going to get you to a playoff contender. To your point, he's cooked. I think there's more to this. And don't forget, Thielen's first exit had, was yes, salary first, but at the time, and credit to her, she's remained quiet as far as I know on socials this time. But the first time around, his wife spent that season basically insinuating the Vikings were doing her husband wrong. And it's like, just stop. But she did that. Sure as hell, he was saying that to her behind the scenes, right? So I'm just telling you right now, I don't buy this story. I think something happened where they just said, you know what, go away.
It's interesting, and I'll close this out with this. And especially because we've given so much criticism to Kwesi and crew up there, but getting him fired earlier this show, I will say, and he's gotten a lot of heat for this trade as well. And I'm not trying to absolve Kwesi from anything, but this my understanding of that situation is that transaction was essentially consummated above Kwesi's head. I don't know if Kwesi was for it. I don't know if he was against it, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter what his take was. The Vikings were going to get this done, and it was at a level of the organization that is above Kwesi.
Like the Wilfs?
Yeah. I mean, that's my understanding is that there was a push from the ownership group, and and this thing is going to get done. And so you get into a thing where it's like, and then all of a sudden Dan Morgan is pulling, and he ends up getting, what he got. And obviously, it appeared to be an overpay in the moment, and now it has turned out to be an egregious overpay. But this is one thing where I don't know if Kwesi deserves the criticism for this one. He deserved criticism for plenty, but I'm not sure this one. Judd, with that is a wrap on our first Tuesday episode of Thor Talks Purple with the sports dad, Judd Zulgad. Don't forget to click the like button on YouTube if you would. Click the subscription button. This is a new channel, the Thor Talks Purple channel. It would really help us out if you would click the subscribe button as well. Please give us a 5-star rating. I'll start shouting people out to give us a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. That's all we have for you today. See you tomorrow on Thor Talks Purple, the first Wednesday edition, Wednesday War Room. We're talking the NFL draft tomorrow on Thor Talks Purple.